speaking of lies and disinformation, I mean, here we had one of the worst hurricanes that we've ever seen in the United States, in Hurricane Helen. Is it Helen or Helene?
I thought it was Helen.
Helen?
I mean, we don't respect things that just kill everybody.
Yes.
Yeah.
So Hurricane Helen has done tremendous damage to
The whole Southeast.
Yeah, particularly like places like North Carolina, Asheville, North Carolina was all underwater. You know, we have been as One Hood Power, raising or getting resources to send down to North Carolina because it has been devastated. And on top of the devastation is here's Donald Trump trying to make this a political issue. Here's Donald Trump trying to pretend that the federal government isn't doing anything.
Did he go down there and just dash out toilet paper to everybody like he did in Puerto Rico?
Like people that work with Donald Trump has literally said, like, I forget what hurricane it was. Well, a hurricane hit North Carolina under his presidency, and he denied 99% of the funds.
Yeah. There's so many elected officials right now that have stopped or halted or delayed funds for hurricane relief.
There was another person that worked with him in Homeland Security that said, he actually said, before we send resources to this place, do they vote Republican or Democrat? Like, he actually wanted to see the Republicans down there. So he's on record as doing this, but he's putting all of this misinformation out about what the federal government isn't doing. And so these conspiracy theories are actually hurting FEMA, right? FEMA is determined by the Congress, and the Congress is Republican led. So like the FEMA funds, whether FEMA has funds or doesn't have, it's up to the Republican led Congress, who's actually, even though FEMA ran out of funds, is saying they don't want to give more funds until after the election.
Wow.
So here is Donald Trump and the Republicans literally playing with people's lives as one of the most devastating hurricanes we've ever seen. It's coming into Florida right now. I think it's Hurricane Milton is the hurricane that's coming into Florida right now. You know, DeSantis didn't want to take a call from Kamala Harris because he said it was political. Although she's a sitting vice president, and obviously you're going to need the federal government's help. This is crazy. So there was an interview Trump did on Fox News with Laura Ingraham where I guess maybe Laura didn't get the memo about fact-checking Donald Trump. But she said this. Can you post that?
And yet they're offering people $750
for immediate needs.
For the worst, but for the worst hurricane that anybody's seen. But she shouldn't be there anyway. She should be, I would say, North Carolina is bad, is so bad. And
she was there today for 3 hours, I believe, Kamala Harris.
So again, here's the Fox News host saying, you know, Trump was saying, oh, people are only getting $750. That's for immediate needs. That's like, hey, you need something right now, we get you $750. That's not saying that's all the federal government is going to do to help. But again, it's like, a lot of times these Republicans want it both ways. You say you don't want federal government to be involved, and then now when a hurricane hits, now all of a sudden,
That part.
you need federal government to
Whatever
be involved.
happened to states' rights, my nigga?
Yeah, exactly. You had a comment, Miracle?
It's always a struggle when these things happen and you have to like teach people how the federal government works after they railed against the federal government for years.
Yes.
It's difficult, right? Now, I am someone who's always going to say like FEMA makes absolutely no sense in how it operates currently because I do think that we should have a better way to gauge people who are being harmed and impacted, and you shouldn't have to like apply for aid. I never understood applying for aid if you know like why do I need to find receipts to prove to you that like my house is underwater and I purchased my house and I lived here. So I do think we should have a different process. But putting that aside, when people are at their most vulnerable, when people are literally going home to home to figure out if their neighbors are alive or dead, the last thing you need to be doing is lying and telling people that there's no hope, that there's no help coming for them, and that there is nothing that they can do. You had FEMA, you had the National Guard, you had different entities coming to help people. Now, some of those entities were, you know, elsewhere in the world. And so that is I think a legitimate conversation. But to sit there and say like no one has helped Florida and Georgia and North Carolina is factually incorrect. Now, could FEMA have acted faster? Yes.
They always
could. They have communicated a lot more? Yes. Like one of the things I've even talked about with what's going on in Conyers is there has been no government official that has gone on TV or on their social media and explain to people, this is a chemical spill. These are the face masks that you need to be wearing. These are the filters that you need to use for your home. There's been none of that outreach and communication. So I will always support people who criticize the government, but that is different than saying the government isn't doing anything. People who are in jails and prisons, like, they were not being evacuated. People who are disabled were being left behind. Some of the senior citizen centers did not have enough supplies to move people from point A to point B. So there are people who are and continuously are going to be failed by the government. And I think it's important not to forget that. But that is a separate conversation to sit there and say, like, the government isn't helping anybody. And again, the problem with FEMA is going to be homeowners and property owners and people who own cars get the best support first because they already have the receipts somewhere to send. And it's people who are transient, people who are gig workers, people who are renting, who are going to struggle the most with trying to get support to finance their lives.
You know, it's almost like we seen FEMA drop the ball before on like a national disaster. Like, was it? Didn't something happen?
With the K,
Katrina, when Bush was like in the plane, like looking down.
And it was just like, damn.
Like you said, you mentioned Puerto Rico when Trump went down there throwing paper towels at everybody.
That was just crazy.
But still hasn't recovered Puerto Rico.
Absolutely,
I mean, Puerto Rico still has. I mean, like,
you're right.
When I say recovered, I mean, yes, there's happening. But I've gone and visited these places in the past like 3 years.
Yes.
And there's still so much